This is Pat Iyer with Legal Nurse Podcast. With me today is Chelsea Harris, who is a legal nurse consultant who left the bedside and received an invitation to join a law firm, the Polling Law Firm. She is based out of Ohio, correct?
Yes.
And has had an opportunity to assume a legal nurse consulting practice in an in-house position. Chelsea came to legal nurse consulting from years working in the emergency department. She's a sexual assault nurse examiner and works in-house for the law firm. So Chelsea, let's talk about how you got that position, because there are many people who seek a role such as the one you have and are somewhat confused and stymied about how they can get their foot in the door.
Yes. So I actually have been asked that a lot. Many people want to know how I found this job, if I knew somebody that worked in the law firm. And I actually just found the posting on Indeed. I had recently given birth to twin boys, which put me with 4 kids under the age of 5. So I was looking for another avenue of nursing that allowed me to have the type of schedule I needed with 4 young kids. So I got on Indeed and started looking for just nursing jobs in Columbus. And I knew that legal nurses existed. I knew that legal nurse consulting was a thing, but I didn't know that there was a need really in our area. So I came across that job posting, and I was very surprised to get called for an interview, but it worked in my favor, and here I am now.
You know, your statement, 4 children under the age of 5, just kind of resonated around my brain for a while as I was listening to you talk and thinking, wow, you had to manage the care of your children and a full-time job. I'm assuming you went into a full-time job as opposed to a part-time job?
Correct. Yeah, I was working full-time 12-hour shifts after I had the twins. And then I was looking for another full-time job, obviously, to support such a large family. So I did transition into the office as a full-time legal nurse consultant. So still doing full-time.
Mm-hmm. Do you remember the questions that you were asked in your interview that perhaps in hindsight helped you say, yeah, that was where I nailed it?
I think that a lot of it had to do with, I'd have to say, I did travel nursing for a while prior to, landing a full-time job back here in Columbus. And so I was very familiar with a lot of the different EMR systems and the charting, because as legal nurse consultants know, sometimes that stuff comes in and it's hard to follow. And that's why we do what we do, because it's sometimes hard to understand or follow, the different charting systems and how things are laid out. So I think that my experience with all the different EMR systems and being able to say, yes, I've done A, B, C, and D. And plus I had a really strong background with emergency medicine, and the nurses that were here at the time, they had more, there was a mother baby nurse here who that was her like niche, that was her thing. There was another nurse that had experience with more med surg, long-term care type stuff. So I really think it benefited me to have such a big history in emergency medicine and critical care nursing. But I really think that my background as a whole was very beneficial to me in the process, just because I was so familiar with so many different charting systems and seeing different things.
And overall, what types of cases does the firm handle in which you become involved?
So we do a lot of, we do medical malpractice defense. So we only do defense. We don't do any plaintiff's work here. And a lot of our cases, we do cover, I've seen a lot of urology and ortho cases, several emergency medicine cases, and we also do nursing home, extended care facility things. we really do kind of a whole slew of different stuff, but I'd say that the majority of what we do would probably be extended care facilities, more emergency medicine, and then like urology, ortho, and mother baby. But that's my coworker's forte, so I tend to lean on her for that experience.
And is it the two of you now on staff?
So I'm the only in-house legal nurse consultant. We do have 3 other nurses who work remote, but I'm the only one in-house that's doing the indexing and organizing of medical records. And then the other 3 nurses that work remote will take on cases as the assigned nurse for that case. So they will do the review and medical summaries and research and expert work on those cases.
You walked in the door the first day, and how did you find out what your role was? How did you develop the skills that you have right now?
So even before my first day, during my interview, one of the attorneys that was part of the interview process told me that I was going to need to bear with them because it was a very big learning curve. She was right. I've been here for a little over 2 years now. And she said that usually the 2 years was kind of that you're able to see the cases kind of start to finish working in-house. And so when I first started, there was another nurse who was working in the office, and she was a great resource in helping me figure out how things go, what exactly we do. On my own, I did go ahead. I got on the LNC website because honestly, I'd never had any type of legal nurse work before. So this was a totally new wheelhouse for me. And I got on there and was reading all the different posts and the SIGs and things like that, report writing, really just trying to get as much information as I could on how everybody else does things. But that was also kind of challenging because a lot of legal nurse consultants do their own consulting businesses. So it was still kind of different compared to what I was doing in-house. And I'd have to say that the nurse that was here when I first started definitely helped get me off my feet as far as figuring things out. But after being here for, like I said, a little over 2 years, things have kind of come full circle, and I've still got a lot of learning to do, but I do feel like I've got my feet planted on the ground finally.
Can you take us through a typical day for you? I know when you work in the ER, the doors open up and you have to be prepared for anyone from 1 day old to 110 plus. You must have a very different pace in the law firm.
It is very different. That was something that was hard to adjust to. So I'm, working in the ER, I was used to, you do your 12-hour shift, you go home, and you're going to start new the next day. And here in the office, it's like a revolving door. It's like the same stuff keeps coming around and around. So we might get a new case and do the, initial summary and get the initial records in from our client. And then that'll sit until the attorney looks at that and has the initial client interview. And then we'll get more records. So that'll kind of circle back around. So it's like this continuous revolving door. And typically on a day for me, like I said, I'm the only in-house nurse. So I do all of the organization for our medical records. So all the medical records that come in the door come to me initially. And I'm the one who goes through and organizes those, how our attorneys, prefer to have them organized in a way that they can find what they need. So I do a lot of indexing. And then on my own personal cases where I'm the assigned nurse to that case, as I'm doing the indexing, I'm also reading and reviewing and trying to do my summary at the same time, taking notes as I'm indexing things, so I can provide the summaries and chronologies for the attorneys. And right now we are in trial prep mode. We have a trial coming up soon. We just finished one and we have another one coming up. So This past week has been all trial prep, getting things ready for trial. So our trial exhibits and binders and putting together, all of our papers that the attorneys are going to need, pulling out. So they're not carrying 13 binders of medical records to the courtroom, just pulling out those pertinent things that they need and putting those together for them. Our depositions, our CVs, getting everything date stamped and organized for the attorneys to take with them. So that's been my last week or so, has been all trial prep work.
Mm-hmm. When you talk about 13 binders, are your records that you're working with, are they electronic, or do you get them printed out in paper form?
We get them both ways. A lot of times we will get them electronically, which is fantastic. They come through, a secure Dropbox, and we can just save those and have them electronically. Nursing homes, we do get paper records or original records that we have to hand scan in and then organize them after they're all scanned in. So we get them both ways. And I have found that the electronic records are much easier to handle, but it's, the nursing home stuff is a lot of handwritten notes, and deciphering the handwriting is always a fun task for a nurse. So.
Yes, I was looking at some nursing home records a few days ago, and having gone through this medical record and the entire thing was electronic, it was somewhat jarring to pick up the physician progress note and say, oh, that's handwritten.
Yeah. Yeah.
Remember that?
I haven't seen handwritten stuff since I worked on the cardiac step down from open heart patients. And so all of our stuff was handwritten when I first started on that specific unit. And then once we went electronic, and then I moved to the ER, obviously everything's electronic. So when I started back here and we started getting the nursing home records and it was all handwritten, it was like, oh, I get to decipher again. What word are we trying to say?
Mm-hmm. Yes. What does this abbreviation mean?
Yes.
You mentioned you're in trial prep. Did you go through a period where the courthouses were closed in Ohio and they are now opening up? Is that what's happening?
Yes. Yeah. So we did have a very long period of time where all of our trials were pushed. And this past trial that I mentioned we just had is actually the first one we've had, I think, since everything happened with COVID. And everything has been pushed back. So then the cases that were scheduled for that time frame are also being pushed back. And the court's just overwhelmed. It's been really hard to get trial dates and keep those trial dates. A lot of them we get, and then they end up getting pushed again or moved again. And so it is nice to kind of be back in the swing of things and moving forward with some trials, because it's I say fun. People are going to think I'm crazy for saying it's fun, but things get a little bit more fast paced in the office, and obviously coming from the ER, I enjoy that. But yeah, we were definitely logged for a while without having any of the courthouses open or any trials moving forward. But thankfully, we've been able to get some scheduled, and fingers crossed, start moving again.
Mm-hmm. Do you think you'll have an opportunity to be in the courtroom during the trial?
I would like to. A few of the attorneys have offered or, said that they thought it'd be good for me to come to the courtroom to experience what that's like for them, or, to be on our side and watch things. Right now, I have a lot of work, so probably not the best time for me to take that time to go to the courtroom, but I would like to in the future absolutely go. And the attorneys were 100% on board with that. And it would be a good experience.
Yes. And also, I wondered if you ever have an opportunity to speak directly to the defendants. Do you do any kind of an interview with them, or do you do any preparation work with them?
Yeah. So I have sat in on the initial client meetings before, when they've come in to the office for depot preps, things like that. I'm able to sit in on those. And now with everything being, I mean, a lot of stuff is not even in office anymore. A lot of it is Zoom. We don't have a lot of people coming into the office right now. So I'm able to join those and at least hear what they have to say. And it helps put everything together, you know, hearing all of their stuff, because there was a point in time where when I first started, I didn't really understand the whole process and who was talking to who and when. I thought I was organized. I really thought I was organized when I started this job. And then I quickly realized that that was something I needed to work on. So now that I've kind of gotten in the swing of things and able to do better at my time management, I have had the opportunity to sit in and speak with and listen to our actual defendants on the cases, which is very helpful to me working up the case from the nurse's perspective.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Yeah, I can appreciate that.
Mm-hmm.
Do you, as part of your job, get involved in locating expert witnesses for the medical malpractice defense cases? Before we continue with the show, I'd like to share this special announcement with you.
Hello, I'm Teresa Devitt Lynch. I'm a forensic nurse and a legal nurse consultant, and I primarily focus on criminal cases. And LNCs have a lot of information, and they can be a pivotal asset to attorneys in criminal cases, domestic violence being one type of the criminal cases that they can work on. So I collaborated with Pat Iyer, and we're holding a 2-day domestic violence, how LNCs can help attorneys conference on the 9th and 10th of June. This will have a variety of topics related to how LNCs can evaluate the injuries related to domestic violence. Also, we'll have a forensic psych talking, and then some business tips, and Pat's going to talk about report writing. So I have with me here today Victoria Morton. She's a forensic nurse, and she's actually going to be giving the presentation on strangulation as it relates to domestic violence and how the LNC can analyze it when they're doing a case review. Thank you, first of all, for being here, Victoria.
Thank you for having me.
My pleasure. Could you kind of just give us a quick insight on what you'll be talking about during your strangulation presentation?
Sure. This is a topic that's very important, especially in the context of domestic violence and intimate partner violence. So first, we'll be doing a little introduction and overview about what actually is strangulation and some myths about it. Talking about strangulation, of course, in the context of the intimate partner violence relationship, but also be doing an anatomy review, just looking at primarily the vessels of the neck and the mechanics and what exactly is happening in the body when somebody is strangled. And then also looking at the physiology, specifically the brain of anoxic brain injury, loss of consciousness, structures in the brain, and some other things that can contribute to things like loss of memory that tend to happen in patients who are strangled. We'll look at the physical exam and findings and what signs and symptoms a patient who has been strangled may or may not exhibit and why that might be the case. We'll also look at standards of medical care and what is the gold standard as far as radiologic testing and treatment, and what those findings look like on those diagnostic tests. And then finally, we'll look at the laws, because these laws can vary from state to state depending on the jurisdiction. There may be mandated reporting or not. And some state laws even might have statutes related to consensual breath play or impeding of breathing and circulation, which can get interesting.
It can, yes. And there's really a lot to talk about when you talk about intimate partner, domestic violence, strangulation, in addition to the other injuries that a victim of this crime can experience. So I do hope that you will join us on the 9th and the 10th of June for the domestic violence, how LNCs can assist or help attorneys. And to find out more information, the website is lnc.tips/DV. So Victoria, thank you very much for being here with me today. And I, for one, am really looking forward to your presentation in June.
Thank you so much. I'm really, really excited to present on this topic.
So make sure that you look for more information, lnc.tips/DV.
Now let's return to the show.
I do. We do have a database that we use when we find experts that are happy to help or willing to work with us. We do keep a database on our own files with contact information for those physicians, but you don't always want to use the same people over and over and over and over again, especially when you have a lot of similar cases. So that is part of my responsibility, is finding new experts that we can use in our cases. And there are times that I will go to the database and see, if we have someone in there that would be a good fit. And then there's other times that I will maybe get on like PubMed and start looking up, journal articles and things that have been published that have to do with our case. Like, for example, we had a case regarding a prostate cancer diagnosis. And we were looking at, PSA levels and things like that. So I just got online and started looking, for articles related to PSA levels and prostate cancer and things like that. And I was able to find a urologist who also specialized in oncology, and brought him on board for that case. But sometimes it's just searching, and sometimes it's local. We need somebody local, and other times, I'll find people that are out of state and the attorneys are on board. And if our client's on board with that, then we'll get, experts from out of state too. It just depends on the situation.
Do you do any kind of a background check or a verification of board certification or licensure issues?
So our paralegal actually handles that. So whoever the paralegal assigned to the cases does all of the background checks and things like that. So once I find the expert, I'll send the CV and all the things that I can get on them to our attorney and paralegal. And then we also provide that to the client, for approval. And our paralegal is the one who does more of the vetting from that side of things.
Mm-hmm. All right. I spent a fair amount of my time looking for experts for plaintiff attorneys, and I always had this fantasy that the defense side had this so much more easy in terms of getting physicians in particular who would stand up and agree to help defend one of their brethren.
Yeah.
Have you found that to be true, or is this just my fantasy?
A lot of physicians, now mind you, the past 2 years have been a lot of COVID going on. And so the healthcare system has just been so busy. Before that, I can't say because I wasn't doing it then, but it's been difficult to find doctors who are available right now. It's better now than it was last year, but a lot of physicians were just so busy. And I think that goes for everyone that was working in, on the ground in healthcare.
Yeah.
It was hard to find someone who had the time or availability to review records and help us out, because in the state of Ohio, they still have to be practicing at least 50% of their time clinically. So a lot of these physicians were, in the trenches, just like all the nurses and everybody else, respiratory therapists, everyone in the medical field with COVID. So it was difficult there for a little bit trying to find people. But I would say that we're probably in the same boat, that it's not as easy as I would hope it would be finding defense experts. So it can be challenging, but thankfully we do have some that we've worked with before that are usually willing to help out if, we can't find what we're looking for exactly.
You went from a very different type of environment into the law firm. Just putting myself mentally in the ER, I'm thinking of alarms and doors opening and closing and pages and people shouting, to what seems to be a pretty quiet environment, at least from what I can tell.
Yes.
What was the biggest aspect of your transition that you did not expect?
I thought that I would have more of a difficult time sitting down and concentrating and staying like at my desk.
Mhm.
Before I started nursing school, I thought that I wanted to be an attorney. So I had done pre-law stuff and decided I was not meant to sit at a desk. And here I am sitting at a desk. So I ended up going into the nursing field because all my family was in the medical field. So I really thought I was going to struggle with like sitting still and staying focused because like you said, there's so many things going on in the emergency room and you're just bouncing back and forth here and there. And, you spend a full 12 hours on your feet. So
Mhm.
I was worried that I was going to have a hard time getting my work done and staying focused. But it's so quiet and, at home I've got 4 kids. So I don't mind it so much. And I'm actually able to concentrate and get stuff done. So I was pleasantly surprised that it wasn't as bad as I thought it was going to be. But yeah, it's been good and difficult. But I have adjusted, I think.
Yeah, I didn't think about the noise volume in your house with the 4 kids.
Yes.
Went from a noisy ER to a noisy house, back to a noisy ER. Now you've got a change
I
in the
know.
volume of noise.
Yes. There are times I'm like, man, I'm looking forward to going into the office today.
Mhm.
Just so quiet in here.
Absolutely. What would you say to somebody who is considering looking for a job in a law firm?
I would say keep looking because these job postings go up and they're taken down very quickly. So if it's something you want to do, look every day, because I know that when we were going to hire another in-house nurse right before everything kind of happened with COVID. And then obviously stuff slowed down. So there wasn't a need for another nurse to be in office, but the posting was up not for very long. And there were a slew of people who had applied to it. And so they went ahead and took it down. So my suggestion is to keep looking, check every day for job postings because they're out there. And yeah, just I set an alert when I was looking for a different position. I got on Indeed and LinkedIn and set alerts for like, new search. This is what's resulted from your search. Here's some opportunities just so I could keep watch, because right now a lot of people have asked me how to get into this type of position without having to start their own business. And a lot of, coworkers I used to work with want to know how to do it. And I was like, I just kept checking. I kept checking online for the job availability, and it just so happened that I came across it at the right time. So just being persistent.
What do you see as the pros and cons of working in-house?
I would say a pro for me, just from what I've learned and heard from other legal nurse consultants that do their own business and do consulting that way. For me, it's really nice because I know or have learned what my attorneys want in their work product. So it's just like with physicians, you might have different ways of doing it, but you're going to get the same end result or the same product at the end. So it's valuable to me to know certain attorneys, some prefer the short, abbreviated, to the point, bullet points. And then I have other attorneys that they want paragraphs written out of certain things, and they want, tables or charts, or some don't like tables and charts. So I know that whoever it is that I'm doing work for, I know what they want. Whereas I think that if I was doing this as my own business or from the consulting side only, you have your way of doing things, but then the attorney that you're doing it for might say, well, can you do this a little different? Or can you fix this? Or can you write this out? Or, shorten this up? I don't know for a fact because I've never done it from that side. So I'm not sure what that relationship is like with attorneys that you're working with. But for me, I feel like it's beneficial that I'm able to build this rapport and relationship with the attorneys that I'm working with on a regular basis, and I know what they want and need, so I can provide that to them.
Mhm.
I think that, I don't know what I would say the cons are to being in the office, because I haven't been on the other side of it. So I'm not really sure what I would say the cons will be. I mean, everyone that I work with is great. Obviously having 4 kids, things come up. I can work from home if I need to. So there's a flexibility there with my manager's fantastic working with me. As long as I get the work done, it's very flexible. So I don't know. I honestly can't say what the cons will be, because I'm not really sure about the other side.
Mhm.
I don't know.
Well, you mentioned something that I'm curious about, which is the attorneys have different preferences. Various attorneys want things done different ways. Do you ever feel like you're being pulled in more than one direction, with attorney A says, well, Chelsea, you can get this done and you can have it done by the end of the day, right? While attorney B is breathing over your shoulder going, I need this in an hour. Does
Yeah.
that ever happen?
It's happened before. A way that we fixed that, or one of our solutions to that, was I provide a list every week of what I have going on, whether it's records to be indexed, med summaries that need updated, radiology that needs to be like cataloged. So that way I give that to my manager, so she knows where I'm at with my workload. And then we also send that to all the attorneys in the office. And that gives them the opportunity to say, I see you have this on your list. I have, they might have a depot coming up, or some type of client meeting that, I might not have seen on the calendar, or something that was recently set up. So that gives them the chance to tell me, can you get this done sooner rather than later?
Mhm.
And usually they're pretty good about giving me a time frame, like, hey, I need this done within the next week, or hey, can I get this done by the end of the month or the beginning of the month, whatever it may be. Now I can tell you, there was a point in time where I was sitting at probably like 80,000 pages of medical records that had to be organized. And being the only one that does that, and then on top of the other in-office needs, it was very overwhelming. And that was when we decided that this would be a good idea, in a way, for the attorneys to kind of help me prioritize what needs done before something else.
Mhm.
So that's worked out in my favor for sure. And they're usually pretty good about saying, I need this done. This can wait. We're holding on this for right now. I'll let you know if that changes. Communication is key to my position for sure, because I've got like 6 attorneys in our in office right now, I believe 7, that I do the majority of the work for, nursing wise. And so, they just let me know what's going on with their schedules, so I can keep stuff flowing on my end.
It sounds like a very delicate dancing act,
It is.
or delicate balancing act is probably
Yes.
the better way to describe it. I envision you like the person. There's a character I've used in my PowerPoints. He's got 5 arms, and he's got plates that are spinning on all the arms and on top of his head. And there's
Yes.
Chelsea
Yes.
saying, I got to do this first before I can do that.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And there's been times it's been like, I've got more than one person that needs something done, like right now or yesterday. And usually those are days that I go home and work extra in the evening or whatever needs to be done to get it finished. But they're all very understanding that, I'm one person, and I get everything done that I can. But it is definitely a balancing act for sure, especially when you have new stuff coming in almost daily. There's always additional records, or, new cases being opened. It's a lot. Like I said, I thought I was an organized person when I first started, but I learned that I had work to do in that area. So my boss, she's color coded. I mean, she's like Excel spreadsheets, color coded, and she has definitely taught me a lot about organization.
Well, I just had a vision of working med-surg and having 8 patients when you talked about I'm only one person, because I know that's something that nurses tell patients, you're not the only person I'm taking care of today.
Yeah, it's true.
I have 7 other people and they all need help right now. So I think the multitasking aspects of being a nurse would serve you well working in a law firm.
Absolutely. Yeah, you got a lot going on. And sometimes it seems like such a minuscule thing, but it needs to be done. And there's definitely a lot of multitasking and jumping back and forth between different tasks, like whether that's indexing and then moving over to finishing a summary. And like right now we're trying to get trial prep done. So, jumping into a trial prep meeting and taking those notes and then getting that stuff done and then going back to indexing. It's a lot of back and forth and multitasking, keeping track of everything you're trying to do.
Yes, and where you left off.
Lots
Wow.
of notes. Lots of
Yes.
notes.
Yes. Documentation is important.
That's right. That's right. Yes.
We've covered a lot of territory today, Chelsea. I know that we could cover a lot more, and there may be questions that people will have after they watch this podcast. What would be the best way for them to contact you?
Best way to reach me is on LinkedIn. I'm just Chelsea Harris. I do believe that is also it's just the / Chelsea Harris on LinkedIn. And that's the best way to get in contact with me, but I'm happy to answer any questions that anyone might have.
All right, perfect. I so appreciate you sharing your experiences with our group of listeners.
Well, thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, you're most welcome. You have an interesting job. I spent about 6 months working in a law firm 1 day a week to help an attorney catch up with a group of cases that had just been languishing, waiting for attention. And it gave me a much different perspective about what happens in a law firm compared to when I was sitting in my office and the records would come to me, but I wouldn't see the stories behind those cases. I didn't understand the flow of how information traveled through a law firm. So it's a great opportunity to help attorneys in an extremely essential role for them working on med mal cases.
Yes. It's definitely been very rewarding for me. And I love the fact that I can see that full story and be a part of it start to finish, for sure. It's nice to see the final ending. I know you probably don't always get to see that on your side, but it is very rewarding to see the end result.
Yes. Well, thank you, Chelsea, for being a guest on Legal Nurse Podcast.
Thank you.
And thank you to you who's been spending the last half hour or so with us as we discuss the functioning of a legal nurse consultant in an in-house position. Be sure to come back next week. New interview, new guest, new topic, and thank you for supporting the show. Hey, this is Pat Iyer with Legal Nurse Podcast. I have just finished speaking with Dr. Hamid Elmyar, and we have been talking about a critical problem that affects healthcare, and that is burnout. As a legal nurse consultant, you may be working on cases where providers committed medical errors because they were burned out or felt that production pressure to push them through an admission, a visit, an assessment, an operation in order to get to the next person as quickly as possible. Hamid, we just finished talking about burnout. What were some of the key points that we covered in the podcast?
Thank you, Pat, again. So we covered what burnout is actually by definition is a phenomenal occupation or occupational phenomenon by WHO, which is a syndrome of conceptualized resulting from chronic workplace stress. However, there's debate as we talked, and your audience can listen more to find what is the debate and if it is only related to workplace. And we also talked about, is it reversible or not, depending on the underlying cause or the root causes of burnout. I would say yes and no. And we also talked about the, most importantly, why the, especially related to the pandemic, burnout is definitely increasing in the workplace, especially in the healthcare industry, and how it affects and the healthcare industry, and vice versa, the healthcare providers. And most importantly, we also talked in this episode about the solutions for burnout, which we talk at the solutions at 3 different levels, which is the individual levels, at the institutional level, and then at the population level. For further details about that, I would encourage your audience to listen to the podcast. And with your, I'm sure with the they have been benefiting from your amazing podcast. And I wish and I hope that they can learn something from this podcast as well, from this episode as well.
Thank you so much. I appreciate your time spending this time with us, Dr. Hamid, and I would urge our viewer to be sure to watch this podcast. If you have left the clinical environment and started a legal nurse consulting business because you were burned out, you'll get some tips in this show about how to avoid replicating the circumstances that led to the burnout, and also to think about, on a broader scheme, what we are doing as a culture, as a community, to support our healthcare providers, because we all need them. We're all invested in making sure that our doctors and nurses are healthy and coming to work every day and motivated, because sooner or later, you're going to be relying on those individuals for your own health. So check out Dr. Hamid's podcast on burnout, and we'll see you on the show.